Confidence comes from proof. And proof is created by keeping small promises to yourself over and over again. When you do what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient, something powerful happens inside you. You start to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, your posture changes, your voice changes, your decisions change. The world responds differently to you, not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. Most people are waiting for motivation to show up before they act, but motivation is unreliable. Discipline is loyal. Discipline shows up whether you feel like it or not, and discipline is built in the smallest moments, when you force yourself to take the action that requires just a little more effort than you want to give. That's the moment where growth happens. Not massive growth, micro growth. But micro growth, repeated daily, becomes unstoppable momentum. Think about it. No one suddenly wakes up one day with a powerful life and says, wow, how did this happen? It happened because of hundreds of small decisions made consistently. It happened because someone refused to negotiate with themselves in moments that felt insignificant. They decided, this matters because I matter. And when you start treating small things as important, you start treating yourself as important. Your nervous system, your mind, your emotions, they're all watching what you do, not what you say. You can tell yourself all day that you're committed, disciplined, driven, but your body believes your actions, and your body is brutally honest. If you keep skipping the small things, your system learns that quitting is normal. But if you push through the small things, your system learns resilience. It learns certainty. It learns strength. And here's the part most people miss. The small things are always available. You don't need more money to master them. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You can start right now, today, in this moment. You can choose to sit up straighter. You can choose to finish what you started. You can choose to bring intensity to something ordinary. And every time you do, you send a message to yourself, I am someone who follows through. That message changes everything. Because once you master the small things, the big things stop feeling intimidating. Challenges don't scare you as much because you've trained yourself to handle discomfort. Pressure doesn't break you because you've practiced showing up when it's hard. You stop waiting for life to feel easy because you've learned how to move forward when it's not. This is how identity is forged, not in grand gestures, but in quiet consistency. Not in moments of hype, but in moments of choice. Every small thing you master strengthens your internal standard, and your standard becomes your ceiling. Raise the standard in the small things, and your entire life rises with it. So don't underestimate today. Don't underestimate this moment. Don't underestimate the smallest decision in front of you right now, because that decision is either reinforcing the person you've been or building the person you're becoming. And once you truly understand that, you'll never look at the small things the same way again. Let me tell you something most people don't want to accept. Mastery is not glamorous. It doesn't feel exciting most of the time. It doesn't come with fireworks, applause, or instant validation. In fact, real mastery is often quiet, repetitive, and uncomfortable. And that's exactly why so few people ever reach it. They're chasing the feeling, not the result. They want the high without the habits. They want the recognition without the repetition. See, we've been conditioned to believe that success should feel good every step of the way. That if something is meant for us, it should flow naturally, feel aligned, feel easy. But the truth is, growth often feels awkward. Progress feels boring before it feels rewarding. And discipline feels heavy before it feels empowering. If you're waiting for it to feel amazing, you're going to wait forever. The people who win at life aren't more motivated than everyone else. They're not more inspired. They're not superhuman. They've simply made a different decision. They decided to show up even when it felt dull, even when it felt inconvenient, even when there was no immediate payoff. They learned how to stay in the process long after the excitement wore off. That's mastery. And mastery is built by those who are willing to do the same simple things again and again with intensity and intention. Think about anything you truly respect. Excellence in business, leadership, health, communication, relationships. None of it was built in moments of hype. It was built in repetition, in doing the basics so well, so consistently, that they stopped being basics and started becoming standards. Most people abandon the process right where it starts working because the progress becomes subtle. The changes aren't dramatic anymore, and they mistake that quiet phase for stagnation when in reality, it's integration. There is a moment in every journey where improvement becomes invisible to the outside world. No one notices, no one praises you, no one even knows how much effort you're putting in. And this is where most people quit. Not because it's too hard, but because it's too quiet. Their ego wants recognition, their emotions want excitement. But mastery requires something deeper. Commitment without applause. You have to understand this. Boredom is not a signal to stop. Boredom is a signal that you're doing the work long enough for it to matter. When you can bring intensity to repetition, when you can stay present in what feels ordinary, you separate yourself from 99% of the population. Because most people need novelty to stay engaged. Masters need purpose. And let's be honest, there are days when you won't feel strong, days when you'll question whether it's worth it, days when doing the right thing feels heavy. That doesn't mean something is wrong. That means you're in training. Muscles don't grow when it's easy. Character doesn't form when everything is convenient. Strength is forged under resistance, not comfort. Every time you push through when it would be easier to quit, you're not just completing a task, you're reshaping your identity, you're teaching your nervous system that discomfort is survivable, you're teaching your mind that you don't need perfect conditions to perform. And over time, that creates an unshakable sense of certainty, not bravado, not hype, real certainty, the kind that doesn't collapse when things get hard. Most people want confidence before they act. Masters act and confidence follows. Most people want clarity before they commit. Masters commit and clarity reveals itself. The willingness to move forward without guarantees is what separates those who talk about potential from those who embody it. And here's something critical, Master. Why is a choice you make daily, not a destination you arrive at once? You don't wake up one morning and suddenly become disciplined. You become disciplined by choosing discipline today and tomorrow and the day after that, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Because what you do in private is what determines how you perform in public. The strength you build when no one is clapping is what carries you when the pressure is on. And when life tests you, and it will, you won't rise to the level of your intentions. You'll fall to the level of your training. That's why relentless repetition matters. That's why doing the basics well, even when you're tired of them, even when you think you've outgrown them, is non-negotiable. Mastery is not about adding more. It's about refining what already works until it becomes automatic, until excellence becomes your default. So stop looking for excitement. Stop waiting for the moment it suddenly feels easy. It doesn't get easier. You get stronger. And the strength you're building right now in the grind, in the repetition, in the uncelebrated effort is the very thing that will set you apart. Because in the end, mastery doesn't come from what you do once in a while. It comes from what you do consistently, especially when you don't feel like it. Most people are waiting for a feeling that may never come. They wake up and scan their body, their mind, their mood, asking, do I feel motivated today? Do I feel confident? Do I feel ready? And if the answer is no, they hesitate. They delay, they negotiate, they tell themselves tomorrow will be better. But let me tell you something that can change everything if you truly understand it. Emotion does not lead action. Action leads emotion. You don't get energy by thinking about moving. You get energy by moving. You don't build confidence by waiting to feel confident. You build confidence by doing the thing while your voice shakes, while your hands sweat, while your mind is screaming for comfort. And the moment you act, something shifts. Your physiology changes, your focus changes, your emotional state follows. Think about it. Have you ever forced yourself to start something you didn't feel like doing, and 10 minutes later felt completely different? Of course you have, because emotions are not commands, they're feedback. And when you let them control your behavior, you hand over the steering wheel of your life to whatever mood happens to show up that day. Most people are living emotionally reactive lives. If they feel good, they show up strong. If they feel tired, they pull back. If they feel uncertain, they hesitate. And over time, that pattern trains weakness, not because they're incapable, but because they've practiced letting feelings decide their future. High performers live by a different rule. They move first, they act first, they decide first, and their emotions catch up later. They understand that feelings are flexible, but standards not. So instead of asking, how do I feel? They ask, what does this moment require of me? And here's the powerful part. When you repeatedly take action despite resistance, your brain rewires. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. The discomfort doesn't vanish, but it stops being a stop sign and becomes a signal that you're growing. Your body is designed to respond to movement. Change your posture and you change your state, change your breathing, and you change your focus, change your behavior, and your emotions are forced to follow. You don't think your way into power, you move your way into it. But this is where most people get stuck. They think action requires certainty. They think they need clarity, confidence, or motivation before they begin, and that belief keeps them frozen. Because clarity comes from engagement. Confidence comes from evidence. Motivation comes from momentum. Momentum is everything, and momentum only starts when you act without permission from your feelings. Every time you take action when you don't feel like it, you send a message to yourself, I am in control. And that message is far more powerful than any motivational quote or mental trick. Over time, that message becomes an identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who waits. You start seeing yourself as someone who moves. And once that identity forms, everything accelerates. You stop arguing with yourself in the morning. You stop negotiating with comfort. Why? Oh, you stop letting moods dictate your behavior. You still feel resistance, but it no longer wins. And that's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who break through. Not the absence of resistance, but the refusal to obey it. Let's be real. Your emotions are trying to protect you. They want comfort, familiarity, certainty. But growth requires the opposite. Growth requires tension. It requires stepping into uncertainty. And the only way to teach your system that you're safe in discomfort is to move through it. Action creates proof. Proof creates belief. Belief creates power. This is why mastering the small things matters so much, because small actions are manageable even when motivation is low. You may not feel like transforming your life today, but you can stand up straight. You can take the first step. You can do the next small task with intensity. And that single action changes your state. That state changes your next decision. And suddenly you're moving. Most people think they need a breakthrough moment. What they really need is a breakthrough pattern. A pattern of acting first and letting emotion follow. Over and over again until it becomes automatic. And here's the paradox. Once you stop waiting for motivation, motivation starts showing up more often. Once you stop demanding confidence, confidence starts building naturally because you're no longer asking your emotions for permission to live at a higher level. So the next time you don't feel ready, don't feel strong, don't feel motivated, remember this, you're not broken, you're human. And the solution isn't to wait, it's to move. Because the fastest way to change how you feel is to change what you do. And the moment you take action, everything inside you begins to rise to meet it. Most people believe their future is controlled by their goals. They think if they just set the right target, write it down, visualize it hard enough, everything will fall into place. Goals are important, yes, but goals don't run your life. Standards do. And if your standards don't change, your goals don't matter, because you will always drift back to the level of what you tolerate. A standard is not what you want. A standard is what you demand of yourself consistently, even when it's uncomfortable. It's the line you refuse to cross. It's the behavior you no longer negotiate with. And the truth is, your life today is a perfect reflection of the standards you've been living by. Not your hopes, not your intentions, your standards. Look at what you tolerate in the small things. The missed workouts, the half-finished tasks, the excuses that sound reasonable in the moment, the environments that drain you, the conversations that lower your energy. Every time you tolerate something beneath your potential, you reinforce a message to yourself, this is acceptable. And once something becomes acceptable, it becomes normal. Once it becomes normal, it becomes your identity. People don't fail because they aim too high. They fail because they accept too low. They lower their standards to match their comfort instead of raising their standards to match their potential. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's what you must understand. Standards are emotional. They're not intellectual. You don't raise your standards by reading a book or setting a new goal. You raise your standards by associating pain with staying the same and pleasure with doing better. You change when staying where you are becomes more painful than the effort required to move. That's why real change often follows frustration, disappointment, or a moment where you finally say enough of tolerating mediocrity. enough of breaking promises to yourself, enough of living below what you know you're capable of, that moment isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's the birth of a new standard. And here's the key. Once you raise a standard, you must live it, not visit it. Most people visit higher standards when they're motivated, then move back when life gets hard. Masters lock them in. They remove the option to go back. They don't ask, do I feel like it today? They say, this is who I am now. When a behavior becomes part of your identity, it stops requiring willpower. You don't negotiate with it. You don't debate it. You don't need motivation. You act because it's aligned with who you believe you are. That's the real power of standards. They turn discipline into identity. This is why ring small things is non-negotiable. Because small things are where standards are enforced. Anyone can rise to a goal once in a while. Very few people live a standard every single day, and the standard you enforce in private is the one that determines your public results. You don't need massive rules. You need clear ones. Clear standards around how you show up, how you speak to yourself, how you handle your body, your time, your energy. Standards around finishing what you start. Standards around how you respond when things don't go your way, because life will test your standards constantly, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle ones. The real test isn't what you do on your best day, it's what you do on your worst. It's what you allow when you're tired, it's what you excuse when you're busy. That's where standards either hold or collapse. And understand this, raising your standards will feel uncomfortable at first. You'll feel like you're being hard on yourself. You'll feel resistance. That's normal. That's just your old identity fighting for survival. But once the standard is set, once it's repeated enough times, it becomes familiar. And what once felt hard becomes natural. People often say they want a better life, but a better life requires a higher standard of behavior, not perfection, consistency, not intensity all the time, integrity all the time. The integrity to do what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. And here's the truth. That changes everything. You always live up to your strongest standard, not your highest goal, your strongest standard. So if your strongest standard is comfort, you'll always find a way back to comfort. If your strongest standard is growth, you'll always find a way forward. So stop asking what you want and start asking what you will no longer tolerate. Because the moment you decide what is no longer acceptable, your behavior begins to change. And when your behavior changes consistently, your life has no choice but to follow. Raise the standard and your future will rise to meet it. Most people underestimate the power of momentum because they're obsessed with massive change. They think confidence comes from giant wins, dramatic breakthroughs, or overnight success. But that's not how the human system works. Confidence is not born in explosions. It's built in micro wins, small victories, simple follow-through. Moments where you prove to yourself again and again that you can be trusted. Momentum doesn't start with something big. It starts with something completed. When you finish what you start, even if it's small, your brain releases certainty. It says, I did what I said I would do. And that certainty becomes fuel. That fuel makes the next action easier. And suddenly what once felt heavy starts to feel possible. Not because the task changed, but because you changed. Most people are stuck not because they lack ability, but because they lack momentum. They're trying to leap forward without taking the first step. They want confidence before action, strength before effort, belief before proof. But belief is built through evidence, and evidence comes from micro wins. Think about it. When someone is at their lowest point, overwhelmed, stressed, uncertain, what's the worst advice you can give them? Think big. Because big thinking without momentum creates pressure, and pressure without movement creates paralysis. What they really need is traction, something small they can win today. That's why mastering the small things is so powerful. It creates immediate progress. It gives your nervous system something it desperately craves, success experiences. And once those experiences start stacking, something remarkable happens. You stop seeing yourself as stuck. You stop seeing yourself as weak. You start seeing yourself as capable, and capability is addictive. Every small win rewires your identity. You're no longer someone who tries, you're someone who completes. You're no longer someone who plans, you're someone who executes. And once that identity begins to form, bigger challenges don't intimidate you the same way because you've built proof, not hype, proof Most people wait for life to give them confidence. High performers manufacture it, one small win at a time. And here's what makes micro wins so powerful. They're always within reach. No matter how bad things feel, there's always something you can do and complete right now. You can organize one thing. You can finish one task. You can follow through on one promise. And the moment you do, your state changes. Your posture changes. Your focus sharpens. Your energy rises. Momentum is not logical. It's emotional. Once it starts, it pulls you forward. Once it stops, everything feels harder.